Welcome, everybody, to the Narprum Radio Podcast. I am your host, Pete Neubig, and I have Courtney Parks with us today. Courtney is the principal broker and director of operations at Allegiance Property Management in Northern Virginia, managing just under 300 residential doors. She began her career in HOA management before transitioning to residential real estate in 2009. With nearly 2 decades of experience, Courtney has been instrumental in shaping her company's operational strategy and client service model. Throughout her career, she has witnessed firsthand the industry's evolution from traditional property management to strategic asset management. Courtney is actively involved in NARPM, thank you for that, both the local and national levels, and serves on her state and local realtor associations. Courtney, that's a mouthful. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. It's almost like I wrote that myself. So thanks for reading it.
It's a chat GPT at its finest, I guess.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
amen.
Just kidding. So, the most fascinating thing about that, and we've talked in the green room about this, but the there is a I don't know if it's a groundswell, what you want to call it, a pivot from property manager to asset management. So when you put that in your bio, that really triggered me into saying talking about this because when I owned Empire, I personally hated the word property manager. I
hmm
thought property manager was derogatory. It's kind of like tenant versus resident, VA versus remote team member. And I wanted to, I see here on the video, you have that level up sign. I wanted my property manager to level up to be asset managers. And it was a challenge. So tell me in your words, what is the difference for you? Because everybody has a little bit different definition of property manager versus asset manager.
Yeah, great question. Thanks for that. And I'm with you on like property managers is definitely not a great word. And a part of my kind of career and trajectory was like not being embarrassed by my profession, and I kind of grew up world of at least in my state, property management isn't fully recognized at the real estate level. And so it kind of was like, it felt like an ick for a long time that that's what I did. So I love that it's now this kind of high level profession and we're, moving towards the asset management. And I love the reframing and getting our clients to treat their property like an asset, like a business. That was always a big part of my conversation when I would onboard clients is like, you have to make decisions and treat your house like a business. And in my market, we deal with a lot of accidental landlords. So they're not used to thinking of their home like a business. But once you put that landlord hat on and you stop, you're not living there anymore, this isn't your home, you can't treat the decision-making process the same. So in my mind, asset management is big picture, and it's not just treating the property like a property. It's not just filling a tenant in there. It's treating your residents like the asset. It's treating the landlord as an asset, the door as it. So it's kind of looking at it big picture and really looking at the return on investment, but also the balancing of how do I protect my asset and how do I treat that from a conservative approach? Am I going to be more aggressive? Because I think my husband does finance, and I find that a lot of the finance world and the property management or asset management world, there's a lot of similarity there, right? And it's because your home is an asset, especially once you convert it from a primary residence to an investment property. So, and the more that we can get our clients thinking that way, the more they're going to see value in our industry and they're going to look at us as the expert and they're going to want to hire us because everybody, wants to hire the expert because they don't want to do it and they shouldn't do it themselves.
Yeah, you triggered a few things there. One is you're absolutely right. When whether you're an investor or an accidental landlord, you own a business. The IRS thinks you own a business. The government thinks
hmm
you own a business, right? So you need to be a business owner and treat it like a business. And the other thing is you're talking about your husband who's in finance. And for a lot of these people, not all, but for a lot of them, this is their largest asset.
Yeah.
This is it. Like I'm giving you this asset that's worth, three, $400,000, $500,000. And we need to take care of that asset.
And it's balancing the physical asset, the financial asset, and then the emotional asset, right? That could be tied up in that investment. Most people, they don't invest money in the stock market and they're not emotionally attached to that money, right? I mean, they like it, they want not mess it up for them, but it's not the same as this is where I brought my kids home. This is not the home I grew up in, or this is my parents' home. We're dealing with a lot of um, second generation that are coming to us and maybe their parents passed away and now they're inheriting it and they're finally looking at it like, okay, I don't just immediately need to sell this property and offload it. I'm going to start building generational wealth and I can, look at this like an asset. And I feel like my generation or the younger generation is even more open to hiring a property manager because they're treating it like a business.
So what are some of the things that, going from that mindset as a property manager to an asset manager, I'm looking on the other side now, right? From the property manager's perspective, um, what are some of the things that they have to do? Like it's a mindset shift, in a way. So what are some of the things that you guys are doing over there to help your property managers become asset managers?
Yeah, I think it's training your client to it's edu I think the big thing is education, right? Educating your client on what's expected of them and what's an expected expense, right? So, how much money realistically do you need to save and put aside for recurring maintenance in your home on an annual basis? And kind of treat them like, you go to the doctor and you have your wellness checkup and pay money for your prescription. So if I do that for myself, I need to do that for my home as well. And I think it's also just leaning on the expertise and making sure that they know that we know more than them and that they need to trust us so they're not second guessing what we're advising them or telling them to do. That's the biggest shift is that confidence, and that's been a big shift in my team in making sure we are on top of what maintenance is required and what does something cost, how much does it cost to put a water heater in, that way when the client comes back and freaks out we can confidently tell them that this is a fair price and this is how long it should last and this is a reasonable expense that you should be incurring right now.
Yeah, I know, when I got into investing back in the early 2000s, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book was really big and it put cash flow on the map. And so when you're talking about these generational things, I'm like the old generation guy where I'm like cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, right? And when you're just a cash flow person, then you are missing other things like keeping the property up and building it as a business because and you have to maintain it. And I find it pretty amazing. And I did this at one point where you have these investors that they buy the property, they think they should never put a dime into it, and they should own it for 30 years and they should be able to retire off that property.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not always a numbers game. I mean, it is and it isn't. And a conversation that I have when I'm meeting with a prospective client is what are your goals? Are they short term? Are they long term? You might not be cash flow positive in the beginning, but if you break it out over 10, 20 years, and you've got this resident who's paying down your mortgage and you're keeping up with property values, and we're historically seeing that property values are increasing, you know, I guess you would have the other argument like, you put that money in the market and you could see a similar return. But it's not quite the same as just having your property really cared for and hanging on to it. And again, everybody wants to talk about generational wealth. I feel like that's one of the newer terms that we're hearing. Um, and that's a great way to get to it, right? Hold on to real estate. We've seen that real estate will appreciate if you hold on to it, but you have to put maintenance into it. You have to care for it. You can't just it's not just a set it and forget it type of asset. And you have to be wary of those landlord clients, right? They're not going to be the right client, in my opinion.
So what do you think? Like you mentioned a little bit of data, like you should know what the water heater is and how long it's going to last and all that stuff. I know there's new there's kind of some new vendors out there like Blanket talking about like properties and how to evaluate the property. Do you feel like that's where the property manager can grow and become the asset manager? Because there's a lot of property managers out there that are in the weeds. They're in the weeds. They're the ones talking to the owner about a $12 bill, yet they're not talking about the owner about their 14 properties that they own that have millions of dollars in an asset. So, where's the line drawn, and then who does the property management? Are you having automation and virtual assistants do that? Like, kind of tell me like where the break would be with this new asset manager classification.
Yeah, I I think Blanket is a fantastic. I think we have Blanket to thank for this big shift in asset management, and it's providing more value to the client than just rent collection, right? That's I think previously that was what property managers were. Oh, you collect the rent. That's really all you do. Um, and now it's turning into, no, we can actually advise you on this, large asset, maybe the biggest one you own, and how can you maximize it? Or if it's not working for you, how do I do a 1031? How do I figure out if there's something that would work better for me? It's interesting. In my market, I deal with a ton of accidental landlords. We have a lot of State Department, military. So I'm I'm fortunate in that a lot of my clients they just want their house cared for, right? Because the goal is they're going to come back and return to it. Um, so for us, it's more important I think one thing that Blanket does fantastic is they have that kind of, how much are you spending on your property? What is the average maintenance and is it higher or lower? And that gives the landlord perspective, which is something we have that they don't, which makes it a lot easier for us to swallow that pill when we get the, $10,000 HVAC repair that they're not used to. But in terms of, I think now that we are revolutionizing the idea of international talent and we're able to offload different tasks to employees that are, not local, it frees up whoever you want in that BDM role or that property manager. We don't really, in my company, we don't have a quote unquote property manager. We're very departmental, but I do BDM for my company. And so it would free me up to have those high level conversations with the clients that I wouldn't have had time to do 5 years ago or even 3 years ago when I was still in the weeds dealing with a turnover. Now I can offload the turnover work to my maintenance coordinator, and I have a client success manager who also runs all my systems. They're both completely international. They're doing all of that stuff so that I can sit down and have time with my client and have that conversation and show them how much more value we're giving them.
Yeah, we had a similar structure where we were departmental, but we had our property managers. We brought them into a room and said, we're gonna be asset managers. You guys are asset managers now. And what we did is, all of our investor owners or owners, property owners, if they wanted to call inbound, they would call the asset manager. The asset manager would utilize the team to answer any questions that that person had, or the people can reach out directly to the owner. So that's a whole other owner communication. It's a whole other podcast. But we had to retrain our property managers into stop doing. And they had to manage by, reporting. They had to manage the team. It was a different and it didn't work for everybody. We actually had to let some people go and replace them because they could not do that level. I didn't want my, $80,000 a year property manager, asset manager, dealing with $12, $10 an hour job. And so there was some challenges there. One was just, hey, I'm used to doing this all the time. Now I got a new job. The second one was fear of these investors know more than me. And by the way, most of them don't, right? The investors don't. They think they do, but they typically don't. And so, uh, you know, my BDMs did a little bit of that, but my property man, my asset managers became the ones who reviewed, and this is before blanket and all that stuff. And they were actually reviewing the properties and they were helping guide them with their investment strategy moving forward. And believe it or not, our churn rate went down and our owners were happier because we had the team to handle the maintenance requests and the lease renewals and stuff like that.
Hmm.
You have this, did you have any challenges like that, or is it you that dealing mostly? So you just had to do your education yourself.
No, so I have 5 employees, and over the past 2 years, we've seen a big shift in how we had a layout. Because originally we had a property manager and an assistant property manager, a bookkeeper, and me. And it just became too much on the property manager. We were also doing our own inspections. It was just, and then COVID hit, and that kind of really forced. It was a necessary change, but we decided, okay, what can we outsource? What can we pay a professional to do? So we looked at, having someone do our inspections. And then I was doing too much as director of ops. I was basically doing everything. Aside from maintenance. So I brought in a leasing coordinator. I'm like, how do I streamline my application and listing process? Then that person quickly I saw was fantastic with Lead Simple and systems, promoted him into more of a client success manager, brought on a new leasing coordinator, and then made my property manager a director of maintenance because that was really what her strong suit was. And because maintenance and turnovers are the biggest pain point. And that's what most of our clients care about the most, right? It affects the pocket because you're either looking at a vacancy or some sort of renovation cost, turn cost. So I put her solely dedicated on that, gave her a full-time maintenance coordinator, and then I was able to really have two departments basically that I was overseeing, leasing and maintenance, where all I had to worry about was new clients, um, and really seeing that org chart and making sure that each person knew our mission, vision, core values, and we were bringing on the right clients. Because the problem was when you don't have time to focus on BDM, you tend to just take what you get, and
Mm.
you say yes to people that you shouldn't say yes to, and that's a trickle down effect. And no one's happy when you have a client that doesn't align with your policies.
Are you finding, since you're the BDM as well, are you finding now that you've kind of embraced this asset management piece, has your sales pitch changed, and are you getting are different types of investors being attracted to your company now?
Yes, it definitely has shifted. We still have the same type of client, but I think people or clients are receptive to the confidence that we bring and treating it like a business and giving them those expectations and those costs up front of what realistically this is going to cost you to maintain this investment property. So I think it's beneficial because for the clients or the prospective clients that aren't aligned with that, they're leaving and I'm not wasting my time on them. And the ones that are, we're having that conversation up front, and they're even more open to a full service, property management company, versus before you're dealing with the ones that kind of like have one foot in, like they kind of want to do it. You can do that, but I want to do this. And that was just a disaster as well. So it's definitely given me the ability to turn down the correct business and attract the right business.
Yeah. Oh, you mean you don't want owners that want to make the final decision on renters that you put in,
Yes,
or go and do their own repairs?
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And we unfortunately we had a lot of those because again, you don't know until you know. And if you're so used to operating business, and I think in the sales world, you're so afraid to turn away a door, right? Everybody ask like how many doors do you have, and what I also like is now that's shifting to what's your revenue per door, right? So it's not necessarily how many doors are you managing, but how profitable are you, because that's the more important question. You could have 1,000 doors under management and not be making any money. So
I did have
I
1,000 doors under management, not made any money. I was
yeah,
that guy.
so
Yeah.
I think we have this shift to help to that's helping us as well, that shift, and saying we also deserve to be profitable, right? Property management is a standalone business and it's high level and we deserve to be profitable, and how can we make it profitable? And that's I think that's contributing to this shift as well.
Yeah, I know in NARPM the whole door count thing people get upset about like oh it doesn't matter revenue per door profit per door, but door count does matter when you're talking about operations
Hmm.
because if you have 300 units and I have 984 units and I'm in three different markets, my operations are completely different than your operations.
For sure.
So for that, that's the only reason why I personally, because I'm an operator, I like door count. So I know, okay, who am I talking to as far as operations? Now, you have mentioned automation. You mentioned that a little bit, a couple of times. So talk to me about how automation and what are some of the things that you're automating? How are you using it? And how has it been helpful for your team to be able to maintain and grow your business?
Yeah, automation has been pretty key. I mean, we signed on with Lead Simple, I think almost 3 years ago, and that was a big shift for us. Um, I was very lucky. I'm fortunate. Two of my employees I've had with me almost 10 years. But what that did was that kind of made me lazy as a boss. And everyone kind of knew what they were doing, and nothing was really, built out. We didn't have workflows, and so there was no ability to scale and grow. Um, and not that growth for me is necessarily the end all be all. It for me, I heard someone say, you're either going to have a scalable company or you're going to have a lifestyle company. And for me, I think I'm more of a lifestyle operator. I like the size of my company, and I like having the ability to take on doors that I want to take on.
The
Um,
ability to take a vacation every once in a while, should you
Yes, I've got little kids and I still like making money, and I'm super passionate about what I do, and I feel like, 16 years in, the knowledge would be such a waste to walk away. So if I can, that was about 5 years ago, the shift for me was I'm really not happy. How do I how do I change this? And NARPM had a big, NARPM helped with that, opened my eyes to how I could shift my business and make it work for me versus the other way around. Um,
Yeah, so
so,
you hit on a bunch of points here, right? So the first thing is, people grow just to grow sometimes,
mhm,
really grow themselves into non-profitability. I was one of those guys, grew, 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 and then we exited. Didn't even expect to exit. We exited and it ended up working out for me. But for years, I was living on like, very, very slim margins. Whereas you said, okay, I have 300 units. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with growing just a little bit more to outpace, churn.
mhm,
Doesn't stress the team, right? And your team, I can tell just by talking to you, you're not stressed, which means your team is probably not stressed, which means you get to keep your team longer, which
yes,
churn, right? You just told me you had two people 10 years with you.
yes,
Unheard of in property management.
I
Most
know.
managers burnt out after 3 years, right?
Yeah, yes. Yep. And so basically, I've taken those two employees and then I've given us cushion with remote team members. And so now I was able to actually, one of my Virginia girls, she's part-time now. She's my accounts manager. She's like, I only want to do the books. And we were constantly trying to figure out other things that we could fill her time with because my other employee had no capacity and I didn't either. So being able to bring on three remote team members and kind of create positions that were never I never even had before was a game changer, and it improved the quality that I was giving to clients, and it made my residents were staying longer, my clients were happier. I was getting more referrals. I'm getting referrals from existing clients. It was just this like domino effect of positive outcomes for a company that I had been, burning the candle at both ends for way too long.
I'm going to tie this all back in. to asset management. If you want your property managers or you yourself, the business owner, wants to be an asset manager, if you want to move your property manager to an asset manager, okay, you have to be a proactive company. And if you are a reactive company, and then things are just falling off the plate, you never have the ability to actually be the asset manager. And
Yeah.
by hiring your remote team, in your case, you hired three remote team members. By the way, it probably was three team members for one person in the US as far as how much you could pay them, right?
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
around two and a
Not
half,
even,
three to
but
one.
yeah.
Yeah, it's about 2.5 to 3 to 1 here in Houston. It's probably 3 to 3.5 to 1, in Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
And so think about that. You could not afford, like if at 300 units, you probably wouldn't have been able to afford three more people in Northern Virginia, but you can handle three more remote team members. They can do all the work. And now you can, I'm going to go back to you, level up. You can level up from property manager to asset manager. Is that
Yes.
kind of what happened?
It's absolutely what happened. Yeah. And the reason why it took a lot of failures to get to that, right? Like we had fail after fail for new hires in that time because I've got my people coming to me saying, like, I'm drowning. And I'm like, I am too. I know we need to hire someone. We'd hire someone, they'd be awful. We'd hire someone, they'd be awful. And so finally, we even had a fail in the remote team world when it was more of like a VA. We went with a flat fee, flat based company where they just kind of give you someone because I was scared to hire direct and that was a fail, but it was a win because we had to do that in order to really know, you get what you pay for. And so I kind of had to have that mistake happen. Going back, I
Now you
didn't
know you
answer
just go to
your
V now you know you just go to vpmsolutions.com.
right, right. But
Right?
going back to your question about automation, automation helps us be proactive. We automate, my lease renewal process, that was solely on me for years and years. And I'm like pulling Appfolio reports and I'm creating my own spreadsheet and I'm like taking notes by hand, like who have I talked to? Now it's run on autopilot. I've got it going 90 days out, and the lease renewal runs right into so many other processes. So everything we're able to have those proactive conversations with clients before we even know the tenant's renewing. And then if it's hitting the market, are we able to pre-lease or pre-list? Are we going that route? Do we know a move out's coming? Do we know the owner's moving back? And we need to start having those expectation conversations because Mr. Landlord hasn't been in his house for 10 years and he's expecting it to be,
Like you left
perfect.
it.
So that automation definitely helps us be more proactive than reactive, and it's just it keeps things moving in a way that has been a game changer for me.
I love automation because one, it reduces so many mistakes, and two, you're literally giving every client the same level of customer service. It's a beautiful thing, and you can hire less people to do more.
Even something as simple as, being able to automate that first email, like the touch point. If a client goes on my website and they want to connect with me, they fill out the form, they're immediately sent information. They're immediately sent my Calendly link. They can book an appointment with me right there on the spot. That then integrates with Lead Simple. And, then they get the file. It's just like, it was
Mistakes happen.
amazing. Your mind is blown once you start figuring out different ways that you can automate those mundane tasks that you were doing every day.
Yeah, I have a saying that chaos doesn't make any money. When you're in chaos, whether it's personal life or your business life, it's hard to make and keep money. And automation with remote team members and then leveling up your team, your staff by training them, we send them to NARPM events, training them, train them, and just teaching them about investments that speak to that, to speak to those, to give them that confidence to speak to these investors or these owners. All of a sudden now you're running a really tight ship, profitable ship, and then you can grow should you desire to.
Yep. Yeah, I brought my client success manager. He lives in El Salvador. He came to the systems conference with me in January, and he was about a year into working with me, but I could see such a shift after he went to that conference with me. It opened up his eye. I mean, it was just like night and day, and it almost was like it clicked. Everything clicked, and he understood how the whole process worked. And we're gonna do it again this year, and I'm already thinking who else can I, you know, give this opportunity to that's gonna strengthen them as an employee and then strengthen the company at the end of the day. And who's worth investing in?
Well, if you have good systems, you should have a good hiring system as well. And if you hire correctly, you should have high performers, and that means that everybody is worth getting investing in if you have the high performers.
Yes.
And those high performers now, of course, some may leave you, and that's okay. It's, no one's gonna. I'm not trying to steal your soul and hire you, and you'll be with me forever, right? But those high performers, they're gonna document the systems, and they're gonna run it, and they're gonna train other people, and they're gonna make it better than when they got it, right? They're gonna leave it better than when they got it in most cases.
Yes. And if you have someone that does that, you give them the world. Like just let them run with it, right? Because possibilities are endless.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges one of the mistakes we made early on is when we hired people, we'd only train them on their little piece of the business. And we saw like once we started training them on all the pieces of the business, just like your people from El Salvador, your person from El Salvador, when their eyes kind of lit up, and like, oh, now I understand the whole thing. Because they don't know. If you just know your piece, you don't understand how it affects other pieces. If you're
Yep.
in maintenance, you don't understand how it affects the tenant relations people, the owner communications, the reporting, right? You don't know how to like, the financials. You don't know any of that stuff. You just know your piece. And what happened to us is everybody had that little fiefdom, and there would always be like arguments until we finally had everybody in a room and we went through every process and trained them all. So we'll make a plug here for Systems Conference in January. Highly recommend. Been there myself once or twice. Highly recommend that as well. All right, so let's do a parting thought here. So just give us a parting thought if somebody's listening to this. What's kind of one or two things that you would tell them, hey, this is what you really should look into. This has really helped you.
Yeah, I think the first thing is it's never too late to change the way you're doing something. It's never too late to level up, if you want to say. Um, and the easiest way to do that is to get in the room with people who are smarter than you or who have more experience than you. And that usually means going to a NARPM event, go to the systems conference, join a mastermind. I basically just started listening to people that I thought I like how they run their business. I want to be as good as them. And I started making friends and listening and asking questions. And and that just was the
Isn't
start.
it amazing how giving people are? All you have to do is
So,
ask.
so
Right?
giving. People will tell you their secrets and you're like, "Really?
Yeah.
Okay." And so, and I want to do the same. I'm heavily involved in my local NARPM chapter. Um, I wish more people in my area were involved in NARPM and would come to the events because when you're better, it's going to make the industry better. It's going to elevate the rest of us. And, there's enough to go around where nobody's really your competition at this point. You want your competition to be good because it's going to make you better.
If the whole industry becomes better, it's going to attract more clients, more people to the industry. So what is it?
Yes.
What is it? High tide rises all boats type thing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right,
Yeah. That's
Courtney.
my
If
advice.
if somebody wanted to reach out to you and pick your brain on something, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah. Find me on LinkedIn. That's the best way.
It's Courtney Parks with Allegiance Property Management.
Yes, Courtney
And
Parks, Allegiance Property Management. You can find me on Facebook as well, or just
say that email one more time.
Courtney at allegiancepm.com.
And if you are looking for direct hire contractors or direct hire remote team members, go ahead and go to vpmsolutions.com. We are, I think, now over 42,000 uh, candidates or people looking for work. We have over 45 property management related courses where they can obtain certifications. You can find them hire them and pay them and train them all through our platform. Go to vpmsolutions.com or you can email me, pete@vpmsolutions.com. And if you're listening to this and you're not a NARPM member, shame on you. Go to narpm.org, narpm.org, or call them at 800-782-3452 and join NARPM. Courtney, thanks so much for being here.